Okay, so are you ready for this? We're diving into something I think we all kind of struggle with, right?
Mm.
Facing those really tough things life throws our way.
Yeah.
The ones that, test you or make you question things.
Yeah, absolutely. Adversity, right? It's something everyone goes through, and it can feel pretty lonely and overwhelming.
Totally.
Yeah.
And to help us figure this out, we're looking at a talk called We Can Do Hard Things Through Him by Elder Isaac K. Morrison. And
Hmm.
it's all about like resilience and faith even when things are painful. Hopefully by the end you'll understand Elder Morrison's view and also have some like tools you can actually use in your own life.
It's about getting the strength, to not just get through hard times, but to actually learn from them, too.
Exactly. One thing that hit me right away was Elder Morrison saying not all challenges are our fault.
Mm.
Sometimes we struggle, not because we messed up, but just because, well, that's how the world works, right? Hard things just happen.
That's so important. It's easy to blame yourself, but Elder Morrison's saying sometimes it's just like circumstances.
Mm.
He uses the story of the man born blind from the Bible.
Oh, right, where the disciples asked Jesus, like, whose sin caused it? The man's or his parents'?
Exactly. And Jesus says, neither. It happened so the works of God should be made manifest in him.
Whoa, that's deep. So it's not punishment, but maybe a chance for something bigger.
Right. Look beyond the immediate, cause and effect. There might be a wider purpose.
Already feeling better just from that. But okay, then Elder Morrison gets really personal, sharing his own story, which is like heartbreaking, but so inspiring too.
Yeah.
He talks about wanting a big family and how that fit with his faith.
Yeah. He mentions wanting to live by the family, a proclamation to the world, a big deal in his faith. Big family was part of that vision for him and his wife, Hannah. Just so listeners know, temple covenants, which he talks about later, are these sacred promises made in that faith, showing deep commitment.
Thanks for explaining. So this is where it gets tough. They hit a wall when Hannah had complications after their third son.
And that made having more kids impossible, which was, of course, devastating for them. But what's amazing is they didn't dwell on that. They focused on what they did have, raising their three sons with, love and faith.
Like making the best of it. Right. He doesn't say it directly, but I feel like their faith helped them find that good part of it. It wasn't just pretending, but actually choosing to see the positive.
Right. It's not ignoring hardship, but finding how to keep going with hope, even when things don't go as planned. But like you said, their story takes an even sadder turn.
This part is really hard to hear. Elder Morrison talks about losing their youngest, Kenneth, in a terrible accident.
He describes it so vividly, a normal Saturday, coming home from church, lunch, kids playing outside, and then Hannah, his wife, kept feeling this unease, urging him to check on them. Ugh, it's heartbreaking knowing what's coming.
And they found little Kenneth, just 18 months old, in a bucket of water. He was gone.
Every parent's worst nightmare. It's just unimaginable. And Elder Morrison doesn't hide his grief. He talks about feeling devastated, questioning, even bitter toward God. It makes you realize that even deeply faithful people go through such dark times.
Grief is universal, right? We all question why bad things happen, no matter our beliefs.
But this is where the through him part of the title starts making sense. Even in his grief, his faith becomes a source of strength, and eventually, healing. He made these two rules after that day.
The ones he tells with a bit of humor, right? Even in such pain, he could still find ways to learn. The first rule, always listen to your wife.
Yeah.
And the second, well, if you're not sure, just go back to rule number 1.
Exactly. Kind of funny, but it shows so much. Recognizing the wisdom of people we love, especially maybe, the women in our lives. And also taking responsibility, learning even from painful things.
He could have been lost in bitterness, but instead he looked for meaning and guidance.
And then he talks about how this experience, while awful, brought him and his wife closer. Their shared faith and those temple covenants became their comfort, reinforcing that their family bond goes beyond this life.
So they found comfort knowing Kenneth was still theirs, eternally, because of those promises. That's a perspective I hadn't thought of before. It changes how you see loss.
Shows the power of faith to give comfort when you're grieving, but also their experience opened their hearts to help others who were hurting.
It gave them a deeper understanding, right? So their pain, while still there, became a way to grow, be more compassionate, and understand their faith better.
They turned pain into something beautiful, and that leads to a point Elder Morrison keeps making. We can do hard things, but we're not alone in it. He says everyone has trials, no matter how good they are or their, position.
Right, like it's a level playing field. Your background doesn't matter. We all go through tough stuff.
Yeah. He uses examples from scriptures, people like Jeremiah, Job, Joseph Smith, and Nephi, all these like major figures who had huge setbacks. It shows facing challenges isn't weakness, it's just part of being human.
Almost like a shared human experience. These old stories actually make me feel less alone in my own struggles.
That's what's so cool about them, right? They comfort us, showing others have been there too. There's this one Elder Morrison tells that's really powerful, even like relatable.
You mean about Joseph Smith in Liberty Jail?
That's the one.
Yeah.
Even a prophet chosen by God had moments of doubt. He's like, oh God, where art thou? It's so real. And it challenges this idea that faith means never having those dark moments.
I know, that one gets me every time. It's comforting knowing even those super strong people have doubts. Makes me feel less bad for having them myself.
And remember God's answer to him. He says, endure it well.
Endure it well. There's so much in those words, right? It's not pretending it's fine, but facing it head on with courage. Knowing that even in bad times, there's potential for growth.
It's Elder Morrison's whole message, really. He says his biggest growth came from the hardest times when he had to rely on his faith and strength.
Like those times shape us, make us who we are. But it's not passive, right? It takes effort, being willing to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's not just going through it, but looking for the lessons, the growth. Lean into it. Trust something good can come out. This leads to another big thing Elder Morrison talks about. Sacrifice. He links it to his faith, to Jesus' sacrifice, but also to our everyday lives.
And he ties it back to that big family he wanted. That idea is like a thread to the whole talk. He wanted it, but it didn't happen that way.
Exactly. Remember, his wife's health stopped them from having more kids? Huge sacrifice, letting go of that dream. But here's where it gets interesting.
Oh, I know what you're going to say. He talks about that desire being fulfilled, but in a totally different way, through his missionary work.
Right. They served with tons of missionaries, people he calls as dear to him as his own kids.
It's amazing how he describes it. Not the path they imagined, but it brought a different kind of fulfillment, something they might have missed otherwise.
It shows that letting go of expectations, accepting what comes, even if it means sacrifice, can lead to unexpected blessings.
Like there was a bigger plan all along. And by surrendering to it, he and his wife found a deeper kind of joy. But that's not easy, is it? To just let go of what we thought we wanted.
No way. It takes a ton of faith and trust. Being okay with the unknown. Believing that even when things are tough, there's a purpose, even if we don't get it right now.
That hits home for me. So many times things haven't gone my way, and I just wanted to hold on to my own plan, resist change.
We all want to control our lives, right? But like Elder Morrison shows, sometimes the best things happen when we just go with the flow, even if it's not what we expected. And that's the heart of his talk, isn't it? Embrace challenges, trust the process, and keep going, even when it feels impossible.
You know, it's funny, listening to you, I keep thinking about how Elder Morrison doesn't just say, get through hard things. He says we can do them, like actually use them to grow. That changes things, you know?
It totally does, but we can't, like, minimize how hard it is. Those things are rough, it's okay to feel that, but he's saying those trials, they're not like detours, they're part of the journey.
Yeah, interesting way to put it. Like, the storms aren't there to blow us off course, but to teach us to sail better.
Exactly. Like they say, smooth seas don't make skilled sailors. It's the tough stuff that makes us dig deep, learn, and get stronger.
Love that. And it fits with what Elder Morrison says later. He even quotes scripture, you know, saying Jesus learned obedience by the things which he suffered.
Whoa, think about that. It totally changes how we see hard times. Not something to avoid, but to embrace, or at least accept. It's how we grow.
Makes me think of times I've been through the ringer. Looking back, I see how much I learned, how much stronger I got. I wouldn't be me if I'd skipped those parts.
It's when we're pushed that we find out what we're made of. Think about it. You ever had a huge setback, something that really tested you? Did you come out the same on the other side?
No way. Those times, yeah, they hurt, but they shaped me. Made me see what matters, find strength I didn't know I had, and be more understanding of others struggling too.
That's beautiful, isn't it? Even from those dark times, we can come out better, more loving, understanding, connected.
Like rising from the ashes. And it brings us back to Elder Morrison's main point. We can do hard things, but we're not alone. He says our faith, our connections with people, even just searching for meaning in the mess, that's where we find strength.
And if finding meaning, that's not pretending it's all good, right? It's seeing the bad but believing in the good too. Holding on to hope even when it's hard.
Such a powerful message, no matter what you believe or what you're going through.
Yeah.
Life throws curveballs, that's for sure. But Elder Morrison gives us a way to handle those times, to find that resilience even when it feels impossible.
We're not defined by our struggles, but by how we react to them. Even in the darkest night, there's always a chance for sunrise. So think about this as you go through your week. What's one tiny step you can take today, using what we talked about, to face your own hard stuff, with a little more courage, a little more faith, and a whole lot more resilience?
That's a great question for our listeners to ponder. And until next time, keep diving deep.